courtesy of Inspiring HR, where we do our best to be HR done differently for small businesses, typically with those less than 50 employees. My name is Mindy Flanagan. I am the founder and chief inspiration officer, and I am joined today by two team members who I am very fond of. Kim Sink is with us again today, one of my favorite co-collaborators. She is located in the Richmond, Virginia area, like I am. And then we have a newer member to our team, Jeanine Scott, who I just shared a LinkedIn post about, and I got lots of comments on it, so that was cool. Jeanine just joined us less than 90 days ago. She is in the Rochester, New York area. And for anyone who knows me, they know I don't live in New York anymore, but I have fondness for New York because I grew up in Syracuse and I went to college not far from Rochester. So Jeanine and I have a little bit of a special bond going. So I'm going to let each of them say hello. And then today we're going to talk just briefly about nonprofits. And today we're not talking about labor law compliance for nonprofits. We're talking about people and culture. So without further ado, I'm going to let Kim and Jeanine tell us a little bit about themselves, just to refresh those who have watched our videos before or you're new to watching these, and then we'll dive into our topic at hand. Kim, would you like to go first?
Hi. Yes. My name is Kim Sink. I am an HR consultant located here in the Richmond, Virginia area. I have been with Inspiring HR for 4+ years now. Mm-hmm. And prior to coming to Inspiring HR, I worked in advertising for 10 years. And as it relates to nonprofits, I have several nonprofit direct clients right here in the Richmond area.
Yeah. Nonprofits are we've evolved into that being one of our specialty verticals, so to speak. So thank you for joining us today. Jeanine, the floor is yours. Tell everybody about yourself, and if you've got a little nonprofit experience to interject into how you introduce yourself, that would be great.
Wonderful. Yes, I'm Jeanine Scott. Like Mindy said, I'm new with the organization with Inspiring HR. I come with 20 years of HR experience, and yes, definitely some has been in the nonprofit sector. Definitely in the Rochester community. I definitely did some work with one of the most notable was Dress for Success.
That's right. You told me about that when you were interviewing with us. I love that.
Yeah. So I'm happy to be here and ready to talk about.
We'll talk. We're going to talk. And whenever we're talking about culture, nonprofit or not, Kim has a lot to say, which means I didn't have to prepare much for this because I know it'll be awesome and collaborative and authentic. So thank you for joining us today. All right, so let's talk about it. Nonprofits, and I guess where I've decided to start is where I often start when I'm the host of something HR or people ops related, and that is the power of trickle-down. So when we're talking about nonprofits and we're talking about people and culture, what I think of with nonprofits is that they actually have a gift that is advanced beyond what a new to HR private sector business may not yet have, and that is a defined mission. Nonprofits don't normally form without a defined mission, and that is a step in the right direction in terms of informing what you want your culture to be. So I want both of you to speak a little bit about early on in a client relationship, or maybe later in a client relationship, where vision, mission, values started to really inform what you did to support those nonprofits. And if you want, pass on a couple of tips. Jeanine, I'll let you go first. You mentioned Dress for Success. I know they have a mission, but when it comes to being an HR support partner, where do you go with that in terms of building up and building out the people ops?
And it's funny you asked about that because when I started working with Dress for Success, it was maybe about a year old, or not. The the executive director was maybe about just in. So she was like, okay, I need some things. Mm-hmm. And so really one of the first things was just, showing her that HR is, you have to be intentional about HR. Mm-hmm. Because when you're intentional, you have those job descriptions, you have to pull in the right people, very inclusive and that align with funding goals or grants and stuff like that. I think that when she saw how HR this was like the lifeblood for everything she kind of needed, she was like, okay, and she was happy to outsource. Eventually, she did have some internal. She did hire someone internally to handle HR, but always was kept on speed dial to assist her because that mission, like you said, is there.
Well, and it's not uncommon, as we know, that when you grow to the point that you want someone in an HR seat internally, at least part time, the HR department alone is lonely. Even as skilled as those people are in that role, they can't know everything. We can't know everything. But when you sit on this silo, and AI will only take you so far, sometimes you need a collaborative partner to take a project off your plate, to maintain something for you, or help you navigate a gray area, something or other, while just staring at yourself in a mirror to fix this. I didn't think this employee relations thing would ever happen to me. Sometimes you need somebody else to bounce ideas off of. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that someone like will also protect that mission. Keep reminding, okay, this is what the mission is, and a good HR, intentional HR, deliberate HR will do that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean about the mission being the guiding light. Yes, I put guiding light in there because we are a lighthouse in our logo. So yes, I dropped that intentionally. Kim, same question. Where do you see, whether it's early on or as they mature as an organization, where have you seen mission show up and an opportunity to help that inform the build out of people ops?
Everywhere. I think that with nonprofits, you do come with a mission, vision, and values, and it's almost exclusively outward facing, and because that's why the nonprofit exists, is to support the mission and the vision, and hopefully the values support it. What a lot of nonprofit companies don't consider is how does this mission, vision, and values internally affect us? Does it apply to us in the same way? Do our external values match our internal values, or do we need to make some adjustments to that? Usually it's a light bulb moment when they realize, oh, we're not actually internally doing what we're saying externally that we do.
Yeah.
So, every company is a little bit different. And when we help build out nonprofit infrastructure, it's really guided by the mission, vision, and values. It's putting into play what they say that they're going to do. It's matching what externally their mission is. Their culture is supporting the people that support the mission.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a really good way to put it. So then that helps me segue over to the nonprofits are also unique to some of the private sector businesses we work with, because the top dogs, so to speak, in the private sector are usually the owners, the COO sometimes, because the CEO may be detached, but rarely are we finding in the private sector that there's a board to take into consideration. That is not the case with our nonprofit clients, and it does seem as though the board, not having to do with compliance or risk mitigation, but the board's involvement in the culture side of the business seems to really vary. So Kim, I'll start with you, and then Jeanine, I'll ask you. Where have you seen, when it comes to playing the long game with culture, where have you seen the board and the executive director working well? And where could you share some learns, where if people are experiencing something like you just described, they might recognize it as something to redefine and fix? What can you share?
So when you think of the makeup of a board, and I was actually helping a nonprofit client this morning, I pulled open the website, I was looking at the makeup of the board, and underneath each board member's name and picture had where they currently work. What organization are they coming from? And I think it's important to remember that board members are volunteers. And they have a full life outside of the nonprofit. So generally their work with the nonprofit, they're fitting it into other meetings of a completely different organization that they're part of. And every board member is coming from a different type of company, a different size, and they want to interject what they know to be true at their company at a nonprofit. And it is helpful. The best working relationships is when the board member understands the separate entity that the nonprofit is. It is completely different than where they're coming from, and those relationships are different, and they can't fit the nonprofit into the box that they're used to. That's when we get the best working relationships, is when they can separate the two and they don't try to overbearingly bring in their current experience.
Interesting. So based on that, is there a tip you would share or something you have observed for which, say, a board member listening to this, or perhaps a current executive director, what would be showing up where they think, maybe this dynamic with the board needs to be reimagined? What do you think? What would be the cracks that we're showing? I gave her a stumper. She thought
performance management is a big topic that we assist clients with. And if I have a board member that's providing input, and the board member is coming from VCU, which is a huge organization, and the nonprofit is less than 10 people, you can't have the exact same performance review process that VCU has at a less than 10 person. You do not want that.
Yeah.
No. So it is my job to help them understand being at a small organization has pros and its cons. And a pro is you can do exactly what you want with performance management to make it work for less than 10 people. And it's not for a multi-thousand person entity. So I think that's part of it, is helping them understand what makes this particular organization unique and how can we play to its strengths that's much different than the organization that you're currently working at.
Excellent point. All right, Jeanine, now that you've heard Kim's answers, same with you in terms of, and you can storytell it out any way you want, but where in your history have you seen the board dynamic between executive director and board and vice versa work really well relative to culture and moving culture forward, maturing the company, versus where you've seen some kinks in the armor?
And so I think that's a wonderful question, because you have to sit and think, because I sit on boards, right?
Oh, I didn't even know that. Good for you.
Yeah. Why do people sit on boards? Right? What's their reason?
I'm
Everybody
retired.
has their
I don't
own
know.
reason why they do it. Okay, so that's number one. Let's think about why these board members. Now we already know they're volunteers. They work for someone else. Why did they choose to sit on your board? Some seek out sitting on the board, and some get chosen. So let's think about what's their reasoning for joining the board, because we know it's a lot of work. And then why, so, and I'm thinking the executive director needs to also understand that reasoning, because once they understand what motivates their board members, that's where the synergy comes in.
Good point.
Because, and then, I mean, culture is, like you said, we were talking about culture here, but if there is dissension amongst the board because, this board member joined because of this, and you act like you don't know or don't see or don't acknowledge the reason why they joined this board, then of course you're not giving them what they need, and they're volunteers. So let's make sure. So I'm thinking you want to definitely understand the motivation of your board members. That will create the synergy you need for decisions within the organization, within a nonprofit.
Good points. Have you had an opportunity to see some of this kinks in the armor, and have been people receptive to fixing it?
Absolutely. And every board, again, is a different beast. You have, I've sat on boards where it's bleeding hearts. Like everybody we just gotta help, And then there's boards like, okay, I'm sitting here because it looks good on a resume, or I'm sitting, so you have all of these reasons, right? Or I'm doing this because I have a little time, I want to help, but I can't be very helpful. So understanding their needs. But the boards that I've sat on that are active and make changes and actually do the mission work are the boards that can communicate effectively. They influence, and they're people of integrity. Those are the boards that I see that really flourish, and you will see it within that nonprofit.
Yeah, it's interesting. You use that example, and I'm like, some people volunteer and some were voluntold.
That's right.
I hope when I voluntold people that doesn't
this.
show up.
Like, what do you mean? Yeah. So yeah.
Actually, that since I've been a part of a couple of boards, it's actually really good feedback for any board nominating committee to think about. If you believe in trickle down and you want to set the executive director up for success to create a great place to work culture, part of that is contingent on the communication dynamic with the board. So you actually have this extra level of trickle down where you could have a successful culture or kinks in the armor, as I've been putting it, because of the dynamic between the executive director and the board. All right, Kim, question as we wrap up, thinking about culture. I'm going to do 5 more minutes on this, and I'm going to use an example. If you know you need to leverage your vision, mission, and values and have that show up across all of your people ops so you can achieve organizational authenticity, we prescribe this for nonprofits as much as we do for profits, because that's what gets employees staying, wanting to stay, and rowing in the same direction. When you're achieving organizational authenticity, but you acknowledge that the dynamic between the executive director and the board influences that, what do you say to nonprofits, and we've had this happen with a few of them, that say, I want a policy either understood by everything or understood by everyone, and maybe it's in the handbook, maybe it's not, that you are not permitted to contact the board. What do you say to the executive director who is concerned about culture, but you're not allowed to talk to the board, doesn't land the way they think it lands? What do you do in that situation?
There's kind of a complicated answer because
it's too bad. One of our core values is simplify. You're not allowed to talk anymore. No, I'm just kidding.
One of our current clients is trying to figure this out. And before I answer the question, I'm going to take a step back and say a layered problem with nonprofits is board turnover, that you get a good synergy, you have the same people, somebody comes off, you lose some of the historical information, etc. And the bylaws actually dictate some of this. And some of the bylaws dictate, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, what employees are allowed to do. And it's either nefarious, where they're trying to hide that from employees, or you just don't know what employees should or shouldn't do. I think that the majority of the time people get disengaged because there's lack of clarity, and providing an actual roadmap to say this is how you get to the board if you need to get to the board is actually helpful. It's not hurtful. I think that it's probably just explaining that it's helpful to your employees to show them how do you express any sort of feedback if they have it, instead of withholding it from them.
Well, you know it's a good point, and what's a head scratcher to me, because I've done enough work with nonprofits, volunteered on some boards, and been to their fundraising galas. And it's interesting, a nonprofit fundraising galas, everybody's expected to go. What do you do in an environment where you told all the employees you can't talk to the board, yet you're supposed to effectively interact with them and praise them at these galas? Like, I just don't understand. This is like mixed messaging, right? And I can understand where people get confused. So, Jeanine, same question. What advice would you give if an executive director inquires about this kind of policy? What advice would you give?
So, I have not had this.
Well, then you're going to have to go with your gut. You're going to pretend that I'm an executive director and I'm Jeanine. I don't want my employees talking to the board. You would say what?
I wouldn't recommend it. I would not recommend it. And this is coming from somebody I'm prior military, and
so you know all about pecking order then. Yes.
Exactly. But and also it's just a different culture, employee culture today, where transparency and authenticity is imperative. for the growth of any organization, nonprofit or profit. So being almost what's the word that I hear always on social media? Being almost like being a gatekeeper. Like this board has some information that the employees can't have. Like it's just the culture now. That's not. I don't think it's a great. I would not recommend it.
Well, this is a great
Because I
time.
really.
Sorry, finish what you're saying.
I just really think that it's not open. It's not what employees want. And employees like to know what's going on, especially Gen X. No, not Gen X. We are.
I'm Gen X. What are you? Are
No,
you Z? Are
I'm
you a youngster?
No. Well, especially millennials, but I'm talking about Gen Zers.
Oh, Gen Zers. In terms of the
especially,
future of our workplace and what they're expecting?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They want to know. They want to know the sustainability. They want to know, how our funds being used and budgeted. They want to know these things. They want to have access to meeting notes and be very involved in the process as much as they can in their position. And stonewalling them, I don't think is a great idea.
I don't either. So that gives us a perfect stopping point for Kim to give us one of her zingers as we close out. Kim, based on Janine's answer, give us one of your zingers, your bumper stickers. I'm going to tee it up. In the absence of information, employees...
People write a negative narrative.
write a negative narrative.
I love
so
it.
you got to figure out the communication part. And I would say if there is information that needs to be guarded, you just explain the why. I mean,
Exactly.
one of my greatest joys as a leader is to over communicate, to story tell, to get buy-in, to be able to relate to people. You cannot undervalue the power of strong communication skills that trickle down from top to bottom. So, yeah, people would have a hard time taking me away from communicating, particularly when I get a chance to story tell and spend time with two fabulous people like yourselves. Thank you very much, ladies, for today. I certainly enjoyed it. Thank everyone who watched this episode of Uncomplicating HR. You can get more of these videos on our YouTube channel, and if you want to reach out to us for more information about our services, visit inspiringhr.com, fill out our Contact Us page. You can follow us on LinkedIn, and you can connect with me, Kim, Jeanine, or anyone else on our team via LinkedIn. Thanks so much for joining us today. Have a lovely remainder of the day, and thank you again for attending.